Hello, fictional. Welcome to the crossover What Ifs. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was trained by Celestia and got Harem? Part 1. Huge shout out to Ethereal Trixster for this story. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Alley of the End. Two bitter rivals stared each other down as they prepared their last attacks against each other. Naruto, this attack will finish our battle, and after I'm finished with you, I'll go to Orochimaru and get the power I deserve. The Uchiha stood on his patron's head charging his Chidori aiming to settle the rivalry with his best friend. Why Sasuke, I don't get it, aren't we friends? The blonde's eyes pleaded for any sign of remorse in the Uchiha's eyes for leaving the village, but all he saw were eyes full of hatred. So the young blonde began charging his Rasengan. Ready Naruto? They both charged at each other, one intent on severing the bond of their friendship, while the other intent on saving those bonds. The attacks clashed, and the forest became silent as the yells of pain erupted from both combatants. Of course, you wouldn't make it easy for me, didn't you? The Uchiha expecting some sort of reply from his best friend, but nothing was the only answer he got. Answer me, dope. The wayward Avenger turned towards his longtime rival, his body slumped on Madara's hand, lying motionless. Realization dawning on Sasuke as he had just slain his former comrade and best friend Naruto Uzumaki. Damn it, wasn't supposed to end like this. You were supposed to continue as I left for greater things. His eyes looked on at the corpse of Naruto Uzumaki, becoming that which he despised the most. Sasuke became the same as his brother Itachi, a murderer that only used others for testing his potential. Sasuke let the rain hit him as his former sensei approached the scene and stared at the scene. Sasuke turned towards his sensei before walking back to Konoha, carrying the battered body of Naruto Uzumaki with him on his shoulder back to Konoha, knowing he was most likely going to be punished for the crimes he just recently committed. The Afterlife Realm Purgatory. The lone figure draped in black sat quietly in the nauseating wide area, his chair a multitude of skulls and bones forced into the shape of a chair, his eyes wide and lifeless, seemingly blind to the realm he was a part of, his face devoid of any emotions, watching for any events of worth in the world. His icy blue fingers tapped against the skull in agitation as the scene of the elemental nations unfolded before him. This figure was called Death. Death watched as the battle ended between the two destined rivals, finding no humor in the outcome. It couldn't end like this, especially for one without any taint on their soul. Black flames erupted from the vast emptiness of white forming into his trusted scythe, the weapon shook with a haunting lime green aura, the moans of thousands of souls shaking to be free from confinement, which was never to be. Those that made contracts with him were sure to spend eternity that way. His fingers slowly wrapped across the weapon and with a sudden twist the soul in question appearing in an instant. What to do with you, my boy, that is the million-dollar question. His lifeless eyes panned off looking at the shimmering worlds before him, each one similar to Naruto's previous life, just with different nuances. Battle was all the Reaper saw. His eyes pausing on one world, his eyes twitching as he saw the cheer in the world's dwellers, the laughter and playful nature of this world. The look of joy set the taker of lives on edge, as even such a world filled with elation would have its moments of darkness, and this is where Death was sure the boy would truly shine. Equestria it is then. His pupilless eye traveling back to the lone soul as it floated precariously off the ground. His hand unlatching from his side, the weapon disappearing from existence. Uzumaki, hopefully your deeds here will give you the legacy you were destined to have. There will be no second chances here, but I'm sure you are already aware of that. His tone a sharp wisp as the orb of light floated in front of him, unknowing of what was happening around it, the soul shifting between red and blue constantly as it seemed unsure of what color it wanted. Interesting. Kurama's making a desperate attempt at taking over his soul. The omnipotent being watched on in interest as the red light lasting longer before its shift to blue, the intervals becoming less often. Death couldn't fathom the battle taking place as the fight for the soul grew to a close, the red light all but a distant memory as the soul shined a bright blue. He bested the fox in willpower, something I didn't actually foresee. His pupilless eyes watched as the soul slowly floated in front of him, as if waiting for Death to make the next move. Interesting. Naruto Uzumaki, genin of the elemental nations, container of Kurama and purest soul to leave your world, I bequeath to you a second chance at life. This honor is granted only to a few in any world, so don't squander it. The speech, a small contract between him and the deities of the other realms of the afterlife, all knowing that none could alter this kid's path now that the words had been said. Death's hand slowly lifted, the soul with it, his index finger slowly shot forward sending the blonde soul towards Equestria, not caring for what problems the wayward blonde would soon cause. 3 years before the return of Nightmare Moon Canterlit Castle, Princess Celestia's personal room. The wide licorn walked through the empty hallways, her magenta eyes scanning for any sort of pony to hinder her journey to her home away from home. Princess Celestia was her name, ruler of the land of Equestria for almost 1,000 years. She brought forth the sun and moon on a daily basis, ruled Canterlot with a stern but kind hoof, and still found time to train exceptional ponies as apprentices. The thought of her current apprentices brought a shudder up through her body. The day had started off as an awful day for her. First, her two apprentices had finally met each other, and after both introductions, things slowly spiraled out of control, thanks to neither agreeing to the proper use or study of magic. But erupted into the two of them bickering half the day, and the rest of the time dealing with a crying Twilight Sparkle being consoled by her assistant, a wonderful thing to end her day off with. Sunset was getting far too aggressive as of late, and Celestia honestly feared what the mare would do without her friend assistant, bringing her away from whatever the topic at hand was. Sunset wasn't the only one Celestia was concerned about either, as her Twilight's shortcomings were apparent as well. The lavender mare, now a social recluse, only having contact with the bare minimum of ponies residing near the castle. I'll have to think of something to deal with those two soon, or I fear I will have another incident on my hooves, but for now I'll enjoy a cup of tea and a slice of cake. The alicorn's horn lit up as the door to her majestic room opened. Any thought of having a quiet evening left her mind as a stranger sat in her room. A set of gold-plated shoes covering her hooves let off a large clack, gaining the attention of her estranged guest. Celestia looked on at her guest, a stallion unicorn she hadn't seen before. His mane was a scraggly, spiky blonde-looking thing, a quite contrast to the controlled ponytail look of his tail. The stallion's coat was a rustic orange, her eyes slowly drifting on his flank, his cutie mark a red spiral similar to what amateur hypnotists used on foals to extract little tidbits of information. Any caution she held from looking at such a defining cutie mark left Celestia when she stared into the stranger's eyes. The alicorn saw nothing but warmth and confusion in the unicorn's eyes. "Are you alright, little pony?" Her voice one of a soothing tone as she stepped back, the unicorn shaking its head slowly. "Tell me what's wrong and maybe I can help." Naruto stared at the talking horse. It was definitely weird, but he had seen weirder. This was only a small matter, as the blonde tried to remember the exact details of his battle with Sasuke. The last memory was of the two attacks used against each other, and then it got fuzzy. He needed answers, and this talking horse was probably the only thing Naruto was going to see for a while, before he headed back to Konoha. "Where am I?" "You're in the land of Equestria, but if you want a more detailed version, you're Canterlot. More specifically in Canterlot Castle, and finally in my private chambers. I hope this helps." A smile formed on the ruler's lips, her little joke flying over the unicorn's head. "Where in the elemental nations is that?" Naruto blinked, still oblivious the situation he was in. "I've never heard of the elemental nations, unicorn." Naruto's voice struggled as the regal-looking talking horse seemed like she meant what she said about not ever hearing of the elemental nations. "Unicorn like those horse with horns on their heads that girls back in Konoha played with." The blonde raised what he thought was his hand, combing through his mane as he thought long on where he could possibly be. His hand scratching rougher than usual, the scratching slowly came to a halt, his hand slowly moved to the front of his face, an orange stump in the shape of a hoof, now light in front of the blonde's eyes. Screaming in terror was the only rational thing that came to Naruto's mind, as his body readily agreed with this action, high-pitched squeals of terror erupting from him. He cared little for the other occupant as his voice raised even higher, with the realization that his other hand was now a hoof. 3 minutes, that was how long the strange blonde's incandescent screaming lasted before he looked around, most likely preparing himself for another bout of screaming. This wouldn't deter the ruler of Equestria, it was her job to help ponies in need, and this stallion needed her assistance. "Are you finished?" The blonde nodded hesitantly. Celestia's attempt to cheer the blonde up ended abruptly as his face furrowed towards her. "What did you do to me?" His throat a little raspy as the blonde looked at the now accused mare. "I have no idea what you're talking about, stallion. I found you here sitting in my room, that I can assure you that no pony can access without my expressed permission." Naruto relented mentally at the tone of the horse's voice, no ounce of deceit or hesitance as she talked to him, only conviction like so many people he'd met before. "Do you know of anything that could have done this then?" "Done what exactly?" The only thing she had done was point out where he was, and that was a trifling matter. This Naruto shaking his hooves at her, "My hands are gone, and they've been replaced by these hoof things." The blonde's nose scrunched as he'd accepted that he was a horse, for now. He knew that she knew some horse, pony or whatever that brought him here to this place. "I don't know what you're referring to, stallion, but I can assure you having THESE Celestia waves her right front hoof around wildly is perfectly normal here. As for your hands, I don't know what happened to them." The ruler of Equestria contemplated on what this obviously delusional stallion, though she had to get the stallion to believe this truth before she had to raise the sun. "I also can say that there is nothing in this world that is stronger than me in these past 1000 years. Realization dawned on Naruto, he was positive what she said was the truth, the white horse had no reason to lie to him, and that meant something happened to him in Konoha, more specifically during his battle with Sasuke. Gah, what happened? All I remember is both of us charging at each and that's it. Then it clicked, the battle between the two, the ending clear in the blonde's mind, Sasuke's Chidori plunging through his chest, the flicker of life he had, and then nothing. I died, Sasuke, he killed me. Celestia watched as tears traveled down the unicorn's cheeks, knowing that the fact he was always a pony. Calm down young one, I'm sure everything is going to be fine. Her voice doing its best to calm and soothe the orange stallion. My name is Celestia, I am the ruler of Equestria. Can you tell me your name? The gentle ruler hoped to break ground and perhaps lead this down a proper and respectable path after explaining how he got in her room of course. Naruto snapped out of his stupor, his eyes locking eyes with Celestia, seconds passing between the two, Naruto finally finding the right words to say. Princess Celestia, right, I'm Naruto Uzumaki and it's not going to get any better with me staying here, so I'll be on my way. The blonde shuffled awkwardly towards the door, each step he made almost sending him crashing towards the ground. Naruto Uzumaki, that was a rather odd name for a pony, real odd, but Celestia wasn't one to judge, she had met much stranger creatures, one petrified in her garden at this very moment. Her train of thought halting as Naruto leaned against her side, stepping forward to leave the room. I actually have a few questions for you Naruto, maybe you could answer them, like my first one. How did you get in my chambers without anyone noticing, including myself? I don't remember, I just woke up here. His tone flat, not a trace of deceit found as he stood still next to the alicorn. My next question then, where are you from? Konoha. His voice never changing as the sound of soft hoof step echoed Celestia now standing in front of him. There's no place called Konoha anywhere in Equestria or its bordering nations. Celestia's face made no acknowledgement of the blonde's hearty stare, everything exuding from the unicorn exuded confidence, even as she towered over them. I have another question then, maybe one that can help you and I to understand each other a little better Naruto. Can you tell me what you did in this Konohan place? The blonde paused as the ruler looked at him with a curious expression. Naruto truly wanted to leave, but the thought of a voice to listen to his problems outweighed any true desire to wallow around. It's called Konoha, and I was a ninja in my village. He wasn't surprised at the skeptical look she gave him. My career started during my third graduation exam. 4 hours later. And that's how I helped my sensei and my future boss defeat that bastard Orochimaru. Naruto paused. The once skeptical Princess Celestia now seemed to have been completely enthralled with his storytelling. She still had the look of wanting to ask a few questions still, and this was the best time to do it for Naruto's sake, as the only thing left to tell was the mission to retrieve his former comrade. Any questions right now, or do I continue? Celestia couldn't believe the story she had been told so far, it was like this stallion's life surrounded by chaos that seemingly attracted towards him. A masterful storyteller indeed, if she believed they were something the blonde crafted over years of practice. That's what she believed at first, during his battle with Haku though was what made her believe this stallion had lived through these ordeals. The sheer mention of the one boy's name was enough to cause the blondes to pace his story. The only inconsistency she found was the fact that this never happened anywhere. Your life, it's been an uphill battle, and for that I commend you, but Naruto, these things have never happened in this world. I truly do believe you, and I want to ask what was the last thing you remember, so I can finally come to my own conclusion. My teammate Sasuke and I fought against each other, and well the battle was tough, and we put everything into our last attack, and I lost. His voice a sobering tone, she eyes now downwards finding the floor more favorable, then staring at such a happy mare. Celestia heart cried out for the blonde, knowing full well what the implications of he lost meant, and with the final piece of the puzzle laid out before her, Celestia knew the answer. Someone from that world sent the blonde over to Equestria by magical powers or ninja tricks to save his life. I can't possibly begin to imagine the loneliness he feels right now, and I don't think I can send him back home either, so he's stuck here on a gambit for a friend to spare his life. The aged alicorn couldn't send him out into the world, knowing that he wasn't even from this plane of existence to begin with, he'd never survive, and on the off chance he did she feared that he would become detached and just a wandering soul. Naruto, you said you have no idea to get home, correct? Yeah, if you want to be blunt about it, I'm stuck here. Naruto acknowledged the fact that he was stuck here for now, but he hadn't given up on the thought of returning home. I was wondering if you would stay here in Canterlot for the time being, as my apprentice. Celestia inwardly smirked, Naruto's face changing of varying degrees from confusion to excitement and some skepticism. Why would you do that? I'm not even from this world. The reason's simple actually, I believe you'd wander aimlessly around Equestria searching for a way home. She paused as the blonde looked away, that was all the answer she needed. I'm offering you a place to stay, teach you about this land and the ways of magic. Magic? Yes, magic, similar to those techniques you used in your world. Every pony here has magic residing in them, and you are no exception, Naruto. What about going home, can you help me there? I'll do my best Naruto, if I know of a way to send you back home, I'll tell you about it right away. The alicorn gave the blonde stallion a motherly smile, her hoof outstretched, hoping he would take it. Naruto stood wobbly, his hoof clasping onto Celestia, slowly shaking it. Thanks, then I'll do my best, princess. I'm sure you will, now let's get you used to walking, and then I'd like to see if your techniques you used in your world can be used here. Celestia prepared herself for a long and sleepless night, but the prospect of teaching this pony to live amongst her people despite being from another world, motivation was now at an all-time high, and perhaps with his added company, he'd be the one to spark some change in her apprentices. I worked hard to learn each technique. I'm curious as well, but first we need you to walk before we try anything related to magic. Now let's begin, you've some ponies to meet tomorrow. The night had gone by fast in Naruto's mind, but one thing was for certain with everything he had accomplished last night, he was certain Celestia thought he was at least apprentice material at the very least. Walking was a pain, but he got used to it after falling on his face a couple thousand times, and it wasn't a far exaggeration of the truth either. Figuring out magic was nowhere near as hard as walking, understanding the concept and flow was exactly identical to the chakra system where he came from, only applied to a horse. That wasn't what made him awesome, though his newly upgraded techniques did enough to stop any of the naysayers. The Kage Bunshin changed the most in his opinion, he couldn't make as many as before, but the durability of the clones had skyrocketed dramatically. Naruto didn't know whether to be impressed that his clones were more durable, or the fact that he couldn't create a multitude of them to overwhelm his enemies, if there was any here that was. The Rasengan, well, he didn't know what to say about it, but even without Celestia's nervous glances at the sphere, Naruto knew it felt different holding it at the end of his horn. The attack felt more chaotic, like the slightest contact with something would cause an action that would horribly for him and whatever on the receiving end. I'm going to have to use that somewhere away from the castle. His summoning jutsu was still up in the air, on the count Her Highness didn't want a toad the size of tower in her room. He believed it would work though if his other techniques worked here, and if it did work like he imagined, then he could probably have one of the toads summon him back, and everything would be as right as rain. Where am I again? He craned his neck, forgetting Celestia's instructions, lost in thought over the changes to his techniques. Being a horse didn't bother him as much as it did the night earlier, it was still weird, just less weird. I wonder if that tagged along too. His mind briefly thinking of the fox that rested him while in the elemental nations was something he would have to deal with if the matter arose. His trotting stopped at a four-way intersection, knowing one of these hallways would lead him to the castle's main chamber. Man, I'm lost. I hope she doesn't think I ditched her. His eyes looked down the intersection of hallways, the thought of going down each one irked him, especially since he was sure he was already late. Inny meeny, miny mo, caught a shinobi by the throat. Wait, what's that? His head tilting as a symphony of music, hypnotically dragging him down the left corridor. With each step he made, the more inclined the blonde was to find out who was playing the music, rather than meet the princess again. His ears straining to keep up as the melody began to slow down, Naruto's hooves stopping in front of a wooden door. The song came to a close as his hoof pressed the door open. Sapphire eyes gazed into the room, shelves upon shelves of books light in the room. It was at least twice the size of Celestia's room, and had 4 times as many books. The center of the room held the blonde's attention as a little circle stand was seemingly placed in it, and a large instrument as well. Is that a guitar, or what was those things called? Damn it, I can't remember. Mind-numbing confusion conquered the blonde's brain while he slowly walked into the room. Each second he spent idle was more time to think on the mysterious song and what could have caused it. Hello, any pony in here? I just want to talk. You played that music on that guitar thing, so I was wondering if you'd play an encore. The blonde slowly searched for the would-be musician, hoping not to deal with the supernatural. Grayish mulberry eyes opened, her right eye twitched as the ignorant stallion spoke out. It's a cello, and no, I won't play another song for you, now leave. Any creeping thoughts of the supernatural at work quickly left Naruto as he pondered on the obviously irritated voice. I'm sorry about that, I really didn't know what to call it, so I said it was a guitar. I didn't mean to offend you. I still meant what I said though, about the encore. Your music was just amazing, and well, I wanted to meet the pony that did that. His front left hoof left up, slowly rubbing the back of his, hoping to diffuse the tension between the two. Thank you for your sincerity, but I have a ways to go, so please leave, so I may start practicing again. Her eyes shifting to the books across from her, a momentary distraction, her ears only picking up the words of the stallion. Honesty and a little remorse was all she could find in his voice, no other intention clear. Well, I'll let you practice then. It was nice meeting you, hopefully we can meet again on better circumstances. The blonde's hooves backpedaled, his little diversion already consuming enough time, and he was sure that the princess would only wait for him so long. Wait, stallion, my name is Octavia, it was nice meeting you. Heh, I can say the same, though I guess I haven't seen you yet. My name's Naruto Uzama. The blonde's words cut off as a golden aura surrounded him, and with the blink of an eye the blonde had left the room. The grey mare slowly shuffled out, her ears lowered, and a small smile drawn on her almost stone-like face. Naruto, I like his name, it's cultured. Expect something better next time we meet. NarutoxOctavia arriving at her destination, slowly drug the cello's bow across the instrument's bridge, no doubt unaware of the seething stallion watching from afar. His face sneered, leaving the mare to play in secrecy. A few minutes earlier in the royal garden. Magenta eyes stared at two mare unicorns before her, one's looking bored. Those cyan-colored eyes wishing to be somewhere else, or more specifically something else that went by the name of the element of magic. This mare was known by the name of Sunset Shimmer, the senior apprentice of the two standing before her. Her coat shined an illustrious light amber that went perfectly with the bright yellow and crimson red mane and tail she had, an obvious sign that she took her appearance just like her studies as serious as possible. When the princess's sight fell on the unicorn's cutie mark, it was almost scary how familiar it felt, as a red and yellow shimmering sun laid on her flank. This was the first reason she took Sunset under her wing, and it was not the last either. The mare's prowess in the magical arts was unrestricted. Celestia could only see of great things in this mare's future if she changed her attitude, that was. Sunset, please give me some time, my surprise will hopefully be here soon enough. Celestia's eyes shifted towards another mare, her violet eyes shifting all over the place in anticipation. Twilight Sparkle was this mare's name, and no doubt the most studious mare pony for that matter she had come across. Her lavender coat looking slightly disheveled, and her sapphire blue mane with a violet and rose streak going through it, too perfect compared to her coat. An obvious sign of another late night studying, what Celestia could only believe involved her apprentice's favorite sorcerer, Star Swirl the Bearded. Celestia's eyes dropped to her flank, a pink starburst surrounded by 5 other stars, representing magic. What type or field of magic Celestia was unsure of, but she had faith in her student, in all of them. Thoughts of her youngest student brought a smile to her face. She found Twilight at a younger age than Sunset Shimmer, but more importantly was the filly's studious nature. This was a gift and a curse for Celestia. It was touching that she took everything she taught her to heart and furthering her studies on it, but it ruined her social, something that she needed just as much as any pony. Hey, is your surprise coming, princess? I have a hoofacure scheduled soon, not to mention that one spell you want me to practice. Turquoise eyes lingered for a second on Celestia, her interest in whatever Celestia wanted to show them had been gone after the first minute passed by. She'd seen Discord Statue, the story of the harpies of Griffonia, and even traveled to the underworld, so there was nothing she could throw at her that would genuinely shock her. Twilight's appearance threw her off the game a little, but it was still nothing Sunset couldn't handle. Sunset knew she was destined for the fabled magical element, and nothing would impede her progress. Give him another minute, he's not used to Canterlot or any other part of Equestria for that matter. She inwardly prayed that he was coming soon. Leaving him alone wasn't her brightest idea, but last night was mentally taxing for both of them, and Equestria didn't run itself, so a few minutes of sleep and then off to another fruitful day of ruling. Him? The lavender unicorn's voice raised an octave, the thought of Celestia taking another apprentice at the forefront of her mind. Yes, a fun little unicorn I met last night, and as you suspect I have decided to take under my wing Twilight. I'll let him introduce himself, but please be nice, you two. He might not be shy, but he's new to other ponies. Celestia had no confidence in both of her apprentices making Naruto feel truly welcome. He imagined Twilight's asocial behavior would kick in the second she left, leaving Naruto to study magic once more, and Sunset Shimmer would probably lead Naruto on, but only use him in the long run. Something, Celestia was sure that the blonde would take offense to, perhaps shying him away from her, would be best. Princess, can't you bring him here? Sunset's voice lowered, now curious of the newest competition. Perhaps she would use him, she didn't know yet. You two really want to meet him? Celestia's horn began to shine as a steady pulse of yellow aura flickered from the tip of the horn, and in an instant her newest apprentice appeared, his eyes now a look of confusion, then suddenly changing to one of surprise and a happiness. Thank you for doing that, though a few seconds later would have been nice. His neck craned to the two mares behind him, a smile coming across his face at his comrades for the time being. Sup, nice to meet you too. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Twilight stared at the blonde, expecting a much younger and obedient stallion, something that would represent the best of Celestia like herself. He had to have done something to impress the princess, and whatever it was must have been a doozy, since nobody had heard of him until today. Hi, I'm Twilight Sparkle, Celestia's second apprentice. Her lips formed a small smile as her eyes honed in on the spiral cutie mark. Glad to meet you, Twilight. Naruto slowly turned to the other mare, the orange one slowly approaching. Sunset paused in mid-sentence. She ultimately decided to brush the stallion off and get a hoofacure, but those plans changed with their first meeting. It was a matter of moments she found herself staring into his bright sapphire eyes, cheer written all over them, and slowly her gaze fell falling on his cheeks, more specifically the three whisker-like lines he had on his muzzle. Are those markings on his cheeks real or are they dyed on? Sunset slowly approached the blonde, ignoring the unsteady glances she was receiving from her mentor. Naruto's grin faltered as the other mare's hoof rubbed against his cheeks, her turquoise eyes staring intently at his furry cheeks. What's she doing? Naruto waited as the stranger's hoof removed itself from his cheeks, her eyes now glaring at him. Sunset smirked as she glared at him, expecting the stallion to cower under her gaze. Seconds passed as her gaze seemingly unaffected the unicorn, she increased the intimidation only for him to match her gaze. He's matching me, he's actually not bothered with me. Glad you're like Twilight, nice to meet you, I'm Sunset Shimmer. Her hoof outstretched towards him, a small amount of respect directed towards him for their impromptu stare down. A brief moment of silence was Celestia's cue to leave. Perhaps I was too worried about them. I'll be sure to thank Sunset later for that. The princess walked off, leaving the three apprentices to mingle and prepare themselves for today's lesson. Thanks, it's nice to meet you both. Naruto's eyes turned towards Twilight, his smile never fading, even under her questioning stare. Can I help you? Yes, you can. How did you impress her? Ooh, Sunset, I didn't back down from her glare. She tried to intimidate me and it didn't work. Despite how unfair that, Sunset respected this stallion more than her, and she'd known the mare for 2 days. No, I'm talking about the princess. What did you do to impress the princess? Her ire raising at having to explain what should have been a simple question to him. I kind of broke into her room on accident. The blonde couldn't help but nod at the acceptable answer. It was better than the alternative, because explaining that to Celestia was hard enough. You broke into her room on accident, that's not apprenticeship worthy at all. Twilight snarled out, her hoof shaking with rage, thinking that some pony got her mentor, the benevolent Princess Celestia herself, to believe that he was worth something by arriving in her room. I hatched a dragon egg with magic and Sunset stopped the sun, and all you did was open a door on accident. How is that fair? She wanted answers and she was going to get them, with magic if necessary. Sunset couldn't help but grin at the blonde unicorn. She made Twilight cry yesterday, calling it a day in that note, but this was above and beyond anything she expected. Yes, she was a little angry that Naruto got an apprenticeship, but she knew Celestia saw something in the stallion, whatever it was she'd bite. It isn't like Sparkle can brag about how she became the princess pet, all she did was hatch an egg after losing control of her magic in the first place. If it wasn't for one alicorn, she was sure Sparkle would be caring for her potted plant parents. Sunset did her homework, she knew of Sparkle's failures and triumphs since her apprenticeship. But nothing on Naruto until now, that is. How about a test? Sparkle, he can show us some of his magic, whether he passes or not will be up to us then. She couldn't help but smile as Twilight nodded vehemently to this little arrangement. Is that alright with you, Naruto? Yeah, I'll shut up Cranky over there in one go. He noticed Twilight's eyes rolling as he bit his lip, already deciding on what jutsu he was going to use to leave the two speechless. The familiar taste of copper found its way back into his mouth, his front right hoof wiped against the bloody lip. Say hello to one of my friends. His horn lighting up as he slammed both hooves together, and with a few seconds a large cloud of smoke covered the garden. Stillness was all that remained as all three apprentices waited for the smoke to dissipate. A shadowy figure lied in wait, each mare curious at the strange shape of the shadow, wondering what sort of creature could it be. The smoke finally lifted, and with it came to the shocked faces of every pony present, each staring at a large 7-foot-tall, hungry-looking dragon in front of them. Naruto's gaze lingered on what he apparently summoned. He couldn't make heads or tails of why he summoned a dragon instead of a toad, but it was cooler and gave him that off factor. Did it change like the others? I wonder if that's the boss of the dragons, because I know I put in enough chakra to summon Chief Toad to shut her up. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. He conjured a dragon out of thin air without any hesitation. Nobody could do that, even Star Swirl the Bearded couldn't do that, and he was Star Swirl the Bearded. The first few seconds, she didn't want to believe it was possible, but the smell proved it was real, and in need of many scented baths, and with another plume of smoke, it was gone like it never was there in the first place, disregarding the 4 claw prints in the ground and foul smell. Did Celestia know that he was that good with magic? Am I going to be replaced? No, I won't let that happen. Just because he can do that doesn't mean he's better than me. I'll beat him, not at his own game, but I'll prove I'm the better student. Twilight's mind slowly shifted towards her studies once again, now knowing her 10 hours of studying will be increased to defeat her newest rival in magic. Sunset's reaction wasn't much different than Twilight's, as the initial shock of seeing a dragon tower over was anything but comforting, yet despite the fear of being devoured alive, the prospect of getting on Naruto's good side was that much sweeter, and with that simple plan, Sunset could only muster one thing to say. Things in Canterlot finally got interesting, again. 3 years later, Canterlot's castle's Naruto's personal room. Sapphire eyes opened as the sun's beams shined on his forehead, his horn lighting up with an ethereal navy blue hue pulling on the shutters, giving him a temporary reprieve. The orange stallion sighed knowing whatever he did he wasn't going back to sleep and it wouldn't be too long before some pony or creature and dragged him off. Celestia needed him today, he was to be dragged to wherever today's celebration was happening. Check up on the festivities. His hooves slowly touched the warm marble floor, looking around his room. It was very Spartan, a cloud bed his pride and joy, a set of chairs in the corner of his room, and finally an ever-free oak dresser placed under the window. It had only one shirt in it, but it wasn't there for practical purposes anyways. The top littered with frames of pictures, various ones of him with some mare or stallion in a small frame, the most common being Sunset Shimmer. 4 larger frames towered over the two, one of the cellist Octavia Melody, seconds before a giant recital. The 2 frames crowding the cellist's picture was of his beloved mentor Celestia and Sunset Shimmer, both now irreplaceable in his mind. The best picture was a throwback to the Team 7 photo in Konoha. Celestia stood over all 3 of her apprentices, Twilight in the middle, scowling as Sunset, and him grinned like maniacs practically hanging off of the asocial mare. Naruto's hooves barely reached the door itself opening on his own, a white-coated mare standing before him, her periwinkle eyes full of concern. "Can I help you?" The 2 ponies stood across each other, only a moment passed before the mare lunging towards him, her hooves outstretched wrapping around him, dragging the 2 straight to the ground. Apparently I can. "Yes, I need your specific help Naruto, the situation is dire, desperate even." Her eyes locking onto the sapphire orbs, knowing how to deal with the estranged unicorn from a resourceful mare. "What kind of help exactly?" The blonde trying desperately to escape the mare's gaze, not expecting anything serious from the pampered mare. He just couldn't say no to such big doe-like eyes. "See, I am Moondancer and my birthday is today. So, I'm having this party and she said you know ponies, or more specifically cool ponies." And mumbles something unintelligible, "So here I am hoping you can help me out." "Sounds easy enough, maybe invite a few off-duty guards, drag the rookies from the barracks if necessary, and leave it at that." His eyes rested on the mare. "Shouldn't be a problem, just tell me the time and I'll be sure to let them know." His eyes venturing past the mare body, a snickering guard in the hallway, obviously finding his current situation hilarious. Can you get off me, I need to take care of some things." Moondancer slowly retracted from the blonde, her muzzle now a shade of red, from the closeness of the 2. "Yes, I can do that, and thank you again Naruto, this means a lot to me. I can't wait to see you and your friends there." The mare's hooves slowly backing away from him, abruptly doing a 180, leaving the unicorn hoping for her party to be something that would be remembered in Canterlot. Naruto said nothing as the mare left, his eyes still on the white unicorn guard. It's giggling, something the blonde knew was uncommon for any guard. No guard pony was allowed to show emotion on the job. It was a rule that irked the blonde, but was grateful it didn't apply to him. "It's got to be her, I thought she stopped stealing guard helmets." "Sunset, I can't believe you did that, you could have helped her out you know." Naruto's voice raised, the guard's grin slowly turned disappeared, its horn lighting a turquoise hue lifted the guard's helmet off. The effect was immediate, the guard's genderless body changing to an amber mare, her eyes holding no joy as the helmet clanged against the ground. "I hate when you do that, it's so unfair." Sunset's tone a whiny child, moving towards the blonde, his hooves wrapping around her neck, giving Sunset a comforting hug, the warmth of his body bringing a smile to her face. "You didn't answer my question." His voice whispered into the mare's ear, his hooves slowly unwrapping the mare's body grinning at his best friend. "She came to me, asking about you." Her smile never fading as they both walked down the empty hallway. "You probably know by the way she looked at you, but she's crushing on you." "I didn't notice, but it really doesn't matter, you know I'm not interested in any mare." His voice flat, annoyed by her attempt at trying to find him a girl, no a mare friend. "I'm not really looking for a relationship, so please stop Sunset." "Oh, come on, it's not that bad, and besides it's not like you can back out of her party now." She ignored the grunt coming from the blonde, it wasn't far underhanded for her, she'd done far worse before she'd met the blonde. "I'm not interested, sheesh, I thought it was clear when I rejected every invite to the gala each year." His hoof pushed open a door, various ponies scurrying about prepping for breakfast. His horn magically plucked an apple from a passing earth pony's basket, Sunset, mimicking the blonde's actions, only pilfering a muffin instead, as they walked past a controlled mayhem seemingly ignored. "Speaking of rejecting ponies, guess who's here?" Her eyes panned over to the blonde, pausing in mid-bite. His eyes a mixture of emotions, none of them too pleasant, but nothing to be concerned about. "I'm guessing he's here to complain about you, again." "Let him, I've done nothing wrong and he's an ass, end of discussion. Anyways, it was fun chatting with you Sunset, but I need to head to the barracks before I leave." He ignored the look of boredom written across her face as they both parted ways. She was obviously headed to the throne room, and the only thing stopping him from meeting up with his wonderful teacher was a stallion by the name of Prince Blueblood, and the more he thought on that particular stallion, the more he wanted to punch things. Today was going to be an awful day for the guards. Throne room a few minutes later. It was the day before the summer sun celebration, and what Celestia considered a free day, as multitude of ponies would celebrate this momentous holiday in favor of pestering her on the smallest of things. Tomro was the fated. And that's why he should be barred from Canterlot Castle, such a ruffian shouldn't be anywhere near as lavish as this. Magenta eyes furrowed, it was commonplace for her distant cousin to whine about her students' behavior, especially one, Naruto Uzumaki. She honestly didn't understand the stallion's dislike for her male student, they barely ever interacted, and when they did it was only for a few brief seconds, Naruto's first gala excluding, but that was an isolated incident and still nothing to fret over. The benevolent Alicorn still hoped that Naruto and Blueblood would settle things like a gentlecolt, but that implied the two would talk to each other without the traces of malice. She honestly couldn't allow them to come to blows either. Naruto's control on the spells he knew and performed every day were above and beyond Blueblood's own magical abilities, and a contest with strength would only give Naruto a chance to rearrange Blueblood's dental appointments. I wonder if he knows I'm not going to do anything. Aunt, would you please remove him from your presence before his filth rubs off on you like it did to your other prize pupil. His words loaded with venom as both of the ponies knew who he was talking about. The ruler's lips pursed at the jab Blueblood made at Sunset, using Naruto as a point of reference. It was low for even him, but she wouldn't say anything, it wasn't her place, nor did she need to defend her student now that she was here. I heard you say something about me, so, speak up. Celestia couldn't help but smile at seeing her pupil standing before them both, she held herself much better now, she was eternally grateful for the positive influence Naruto had on her student. The mare walked towards the two royalty with confidence in each step and the smallest of sways in her hips. Her mane, coat and tail, trimmed and treated to perfection as she stopped in front of the two. If not, please leave, I want to discuss something with the princess. Her voice full of bravado, the stallion's mouth opening and closing trying to form some sort of coherent words, his attempts and her cheeky grin only serving to leave him speechless, ultimately, leaving the two mares alone. Sunset, that was very rude of you, something unbecoming of your stature. Celestia spoke with an unforgiving tone, her eyes unseen to any other pony, but Sunset's as a heartfelt thank you shown was well received. My apologies, it's just I do not take kindly to people insulting Naruto, unless it's me, but that's because we know each other so well. What most ponies would think was a well thought out reply to Celestia was actually a well choreographed reply that Sunset or Naruto had thought of to apologize their behaviors to other ponies. Only to be used on situations as this where a somewhat sincere approach was required. Thank you, Sunset, now what did you need my assistance for? Her tone lighter, friendlier, and comforting as her pupil stood next to her. The question was as plain as day and something the two addressed on their off time, but never on official work. I was wondering if you would help me out on this trip I'm planning. Her words carefully placed, the thought of telling Celestia she wanted to visit another country without any guards was a frightening endeavor. Naruto was the only pony she actively knew that left the safety of Equestria to do God knows what, disappearing for a month or two at a time. He was always harshly scolded, and training became more intense for a set period of time, something she didn't want to experience. Trip, where exactly? Quina. Another reason why she approached the subject delicately, the nation of Quina was a hot spot of dangerous activity. Any reason in particular you want to head to such a dangerous country? Her tone rose, finding the situation she was being placed in irksome. Sunset was more versed in finding the appropriate situation to ask for things. If it wasn't for the sun on her multicolored sun on her flank, Celestia was sure that it would have been a silver-tongued snake. Specifically, the ceremony for one of the three emperor's sons is having a coronation, and I'd like to witness such a momentous event. Sunset's now finding the ground more fascinating than the intimidating pressure Celestia exuded off of her large frame. Do you plan on taking any pony else? Yeah, well Naruto, and I'll think of some pony else, but I'm just bringing 3. I'm sure I can find a translator for us there. I can't with good mind say I'm for this, but you may go. Thanks, princess, we'll be on our best behavior, and it means a lot to me. The mare yelled out, running away from the ruler of Equestria, her mind already going through the motions of finishing the remainder of the planned trip. And now I have to worry about them in another country, her voice pausing as a letter materialized in front of her, obviously from her student Twilight Sparkle, who should have been on a vacation from her studies. Well, I guess I can humor her for a bit. Her eyes scanned over the letter, her breath slowing as she reread the letter word for word. Dear Twilight, I thought I told you to take a break from your studies, I guess I'll have to make you take a break. There were countless other words Celestia wanted to confide in her student about her past transgressions and the biggest failure in her long life she's ever made. But she couldn't for many reasons, so she'd dissuade her student by sending her with Naruto for the summer sun celebration. If her sister, No Nightmare Moon, returned, she'd be the one to bear the burden of battling her. The alicorn's horn conjuring a parchment and quill stained with ink as it began writing words emanating from her mouth. My dear Twilight, there is more to a young pony's life than studying, so I'm sending you to assist Naruto in his supervision over the preparations for the summer sun celebration in this year's location. Ponyville. And, I have an even more essential task for you to complete. Make some friends. Celestia paused, contemplating the pros and cons of having the two unicorns paired together. There was about 4 cons for every pro, but despite all the negativity, Celestia still believed Naruto could change the mare just like he did with Sunset Shimmer. I'll tell him to his face, using a letter isn't the best way to convince him. So, with that firm idea in mind, Celestia headed to the only possible place Naruto could be at this time, the barracks. The barracks. More time passed. Crunch, crunch. The sounds of an apple being chewed reverberated through the barracks. 2 guards slowly circled aboard Naruto. Both knowing the unicorn was indeed bored because of the apple he was eating in front of them. Most rookie guards would believe that this would be a sign of weakness, as the blonde chewed the chunk of apple in his mouth loudly and slowly. These two did not knowing full well the speed and ferocity of the blonde's attacks. Naruto Uzumaki was a dangerous unicorn to engage in hoof-to-hoof combat, regardless of the situation. So, they slowly circled the blonde, each side step with the most diligent care, as the most rash movement would most likely to their untimely defeat. You guys going to do something? I don't have time to waste today. I have somewhere else to be, and you guys taking your time is just wasting. The other gwar, his eyes narrowed as one of the guard's hoof steps became louder, the second not bothering to approach Naruto. The first guard hoof barely missing the back of his ear, Naruto wrapping around the assailant's hoof, flinging him over his shoulder, the guard's face changing from the amount of pain dealt to his or her body. The sound of galloping hooves reaching the blonde's ears, the second guard making his or her move, only to be bucked backwards with a double hind kick aimed towards the poor recipient's upper chest, sending the guard skittering backwards to the floor. Alright, that's enough, Naruto. Celestia's serene voice called out as guards clambered about, trying to look as majestic as possible for their royal guest. The two defeated guards shrugging off the injuries as the benevolent ruler approached their target. They watched as he backed away, a nervous, sheepish-like smile slowly forming on the unicorn's face. Have you packed for your trip? Her tone a teasing one, enjoying the beads of sweat dropping on the floor from Naruto's forehead. It was a small game she liked to play with her student. No, I haven't. Naruto gulped as her eyes bared down on him. He hadn't done anything wrong yet. I don't need to pack for spending a day at Ponyville, that's it. I totally didn't forget its name, Databeo. The unicorn rubbed the back of his head. He tried so hard to force that habit from his mind, only for it to show up at the worst times. Good, and I am great news, every pony. Her eyes beaming as every guard's attention diverted towards her. She always wanted to say this. My dear student Naruto Uzumaki has been given the task to supervise the festivities of tomorrow's celebration, so I've decided to send him with another trusted student so he stays on track and doesn't forget. Who is it? The blonde looked on, hoping it was Octavia or Sunset. Either one could make the trip twice as fun in his opinion. Twilight Sparkle and her assistant Spike. The look on Naruto's face changed from barely contained joy to an outright shock at dealing with her other prized pupil. I'm asking this as a favor, Naruto, please do this for me. Her voice barely above a whisper, only Naruto was trained well enough to hear the princess's nearly silent plea. It was something the blonde had never been accustomed to. Celestia asking for a favor always seemed wrong to him. Such a sweet motherly mare shouldn't have to ask anything from him, especially after doing so much. Fine, babysitting a dragon is the least of my worries, and I'll make sure this party will go off without a hitch, I can promise you that, princess. His trademark grin plastered across his face, noticing the bright smile that adorned Celestia's face, something the blonde knew he'd try to make as much as possible. Training Days Part 1. 3 months into Naruto's apprenticeship. The unicorn stood in the middle of Canterlot's garden, something that Celestia held much pride in, but it mattered little to the amber-coated mare as her horn lit up a turquoise color, a small fireball on the tip of her horn. Okay, Naruto, I'm in charge of your training, and I believe it's time you learn how to use magic to defend your body, okay? Her eyes never leaving the intended target, she enjoyed her time with Naruto. The blonde was rather open about himself and always had a positive attitude, which was rather infectious and slowly working on the stubborn mare, but she wouldn't let him know that. Are you sure this is safe, Sunset? Naruto's voice cracked out in concern. He didn't mind helping Sunset with her magic, this just seemed a little extreme. Look, it's simple, Celestia taught you the shield spell, so we're going to test it along with my fire spell. Her eyes narrowing as the tip of her horn started to blacken from the fireball. You sure it's not going to hurt? Naruto looked the mare, her head nodding as the blue hue surrounded his chest. Fine, let's do this. The pain erupted from his chest as Naruto's body shuddered as he rolled on the ground, the blonde trying to push down the pain. It wasn't on par with getting a Chidori shoved through his chest, but it beat some of the other attacks. Why does this hurt so much? Naruto, are you alright? Sunset glanced over at Naruto. She didn't intend for it to be that powerful, it just grew steadily stronger and she couldn't resend it back into her in fear of burning her horn off. Please, be okay, it was an accident, brat. Sunsets released a held breath as Naruto picked himself up, the blonde's eyes twitching. She expected him to storm off, yell at her, even report her to Celestia. What he said next would shock Sunset but ultimately change her for the better. Yeah, I'm fine, alright, let's do this again, my spell must have been too weak. His eyes focusing as his chest began to glow, ready to start the training once again. A short time later. Outside of Ponyville city limits, a golden carriage flew with 2 unicorns and a baby Drago and a baby by dragon standards. The oldest of 3, a lavender mare, enthralled in her recent book of study, finding it more entertaining than her supervisor, and Spike wasn't saying a word, so she didn't feel inclined to start a conversation with him. Her eyes read over the fabled Star Swirl prophecy. I'm not wrong, and when she shows up, the elements will save Equestria. Her violet eyes traveled down to her assistant, a purple-scaled dragon that had been by her side for 10 years. Pistachio eyes stared back briefly with concern, his forked tongue poking through his fanged mouth, startling to some ponies, but it was cool in Twilight's honest opinion. Words couldn't begin to describe the appreciation she had for Spike, the only thing she could even fathom was that he was a true friend. Spike stood in between the 2 unicorns, in a bit of a predicament. He liked Naruto, but he was Twilight's assistant and one of her closest friends, something that the dragon knew she needed whether she was aware of it or not. Who disliked the blonde with a fiery passion? The small dragon, thankful of Celestia's intervention, his vacation was anything but that. Instead, his caretaker and adopted sister decided to continue on with her research, Star Swirl's prophecy being the subject at hoof or claw in his case. That was a small concern though, as he wished his 2 companions would get along. He knew how this little feud, I think that's what Celestia called it, started. The second meeting between the 2 was a magical study session, which ended with Naruto being complimented by Celestia, even as far as hugging the alicorn with a small grin on his face. This small action made Spike know that made Twilight believe that Celestia was trying to replace her, which Twilight became very vocal about in secret. So, Spike hoped something would change soon, as his scaly body couldn't keep up with the late nights anymore, his sister possibly not far from collapsing either. Naruto was at an all-time low in the enthusiasm department. Despite his bold promise to the princess, he was finding it harder to think of ways to socialize with the mare. Their relationship was complicated to say the least, one finding the other a rival of some sort and the other trying to reach out and befriend the mare. He didn't know what made the mare dislike him, but it didn't help that when she reacted angrily to his carefree nature, his reaction was to retaliate, counterproductive to his goals. I'll look over the celebration stuff and then see if there's anything I can do to help her out. Naruto had attempted to have a conversation with her, but she shrugged off his advances towards a normal conversation. It was similar to conversing with Sasuke, but with less grunts and more odd stares. The blonde wondered what he would have to do to get her to converse with him. The only subject having in common with her was being Celestia's student, and that seemed to make her mad for some reason or another. The thought of conversing with Twilight finding its way into the back of his mind as they began to descend into Ponyville, the citizens parting ways as the Pegasus escorts came in for a landing. His hooves quickly dropping to the town street, the dirt crunched under each step. The guards took no time in leaving them in the small town called Ponyville. The blonde held nothing against the guards, both wanting to return to the castle and call it a day. Twilight scanned the small town, the ponies carrying on about their day. It was rather unnerving that they didn't pay them any mind, especially with her scaly companion. Equestria to Twilight, do you copy? Naruto said to the lavender unicorn, snapping her back into reality as her violet eyes met his. Thank the sun, I didn't want to drag you across town until you stopped staring off into the unknown. He grinned at the scowl forming on the bookworm's face, something that did little intimidate him. So what did want, because I'm sure it had to be important. Her voice snapped out, eyeing her assistant as Spike glanced between the 2. Well, the first thing we do is head to Sweet Apple Acres and check on how things are going for the summer sun celebration. She was honestly surprised at the unicorn's foresight, honestly expecting her fellow student to slack off as he normally did. And after that. I think I'll remember after I get some food in me. She shouldn't have gotten her hopes up, dealing with him for the past 3 years had prepared her for his antics, but it was nice while it lasted. Now if she could only get him to stop looking at her weirdly, they both could get on with their day. Naruto, maybe you should try asking a pony where Sweet Apple Acres is instead of gawking at me like a fish out of water. But Spike tried to spurt out the reason, only to find his Twilight's hoof placed firmly in his mouth. Don't make excuses for Naruto, Spike. He should ask some pony now. He blinked staring at the lavender mare, his eyes traveling upwards to a set of pink hooves. Pink pony, why are you standing on Twilight's head? He could see the odd stare Twilight was giving him, but she was there standing, smiling and staring right back at him with bright blue eyes. Her smile never wavered as his fellow student looked up, her pink mane and tail shaped like cotton candy, bobbled over her eyes with each breath she took. 3 balloons rested on her flank, 2 light blue and a yellow one resting slightly above the other 2 in the middle, not much to go for the orange unicorn, but cutie marks rarely were. And strands of hair scattered as she tilted her head, opening her mouth to say something. How did you get on top of me? Twilight shouted as the pink pony hopped off her head and zipped through, confusing the trio as what her actions meant, all 3 deciding best to not dwell on it for too long or waste a day away, instead coming up with their own theories. Weirdness aside, ask some pony where Sweet Apple Acres is, please, Naruto. It was really uncommon for Twilight to even say please to Naruto. Spike knew, and Naruto definitely knew it, but she hoped this was an obvious sign to hurry it up. Her eyes peeled away from Naruto, looking toward Spike, hoping he would have more of a chance of conveying her urgency than she did. Only to find her scaly companion walking alongside Naruto. Wait, where are you going? Her voice cried out, hoping he wasn't winging it as he liked to put it. Sweet Apple Acres is about a mile or 3 this way. Naruto grinned as she looked at him, obviously now curious on how he was privy to such information. How do you know that? Her eyes trying to find some sign to tip her off on how he knew how far it was. Well, you were reading, I took in the scenery and well, I'm not big on well measurements, but I'm pretty sure it's 3 miles this way. He smiled under the judging look she gave him, obviously unfazed. Lead the way. She said nothing as the blonde turned. 2 sets of hooves stopped on the beaten dirt path, silently they took in the fields of apple trees. Naruto couldn't stop grinning as he imagined the dishes the farm's residents could possibly make with this many apple trees at their disposal. Twilight's train of thought went to the sheer size of the farm. The minimum amount of ponies to be able to run the farm properly had to have been about 10 ponies at the very least. Spike's thoughts fell alongside Naruto's. This place looked great, and the dragon was sure that their food would be even better. Well, we're here now, what do you propose we do? Twilight quietly said as she looked at the red barn in the distance. Whack. Well, first we find Applejack and then hope she gives us something to eat. His stomach letting out a small rumble, readily agreeing with him on the topic of food. Whack. Har, and after that we meet Applejack, what will we do then? We spend an hour staring at you while you try to figure out where we head next. She glanced at the blonde, his mouth closed in thought. Spike leaned forward on her head, obviously interested in what the unicorn was going to say. Whack whack. Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash and Rarity. He smiled as the words rolled out off his tongue, the look of disbelief on the 2's faces was worth the build-up. What we walked for about 30 minutes, of course I'm going to remember something. Whack. So you remembered their names, do you know who we're supposed to meet next? She looked at him now, curious of who his choice would be. Whack. Well, the pony who's doing that, stop already, it's bad enough I want to hear him talk. Her eyes shifted to Naruto's, the cerulean orbs gleaming with mischief as he stared past it, hopefully something that wasn't going to get her in too much trouble. I'm mighty sorry about that, but I'm a wee bit behind on harvestin', so I'd be mighty grateful if you'd come back tomorrow. A voice called out, gaining the attention of all 3 of them. Whack. Naruto watched as dozens of apples fell into a well-placed wicker basket. The voice's hind hooves dropped to the ground, 3 red apples on her flank, her cutie mark no doubt. Twilight stared at the mare in question. She gave off a country-like vibe. A Stetson hat was actually the first thing she noticed about the country mare. Then the blonde mane covered by said Stetson set in a ponytail, then bright green eyes, white freckles right under her eyes, and the overall feel Twilight felt when she stared at her was that this mare was meant to be here on this farm. Applejack, right? Naruto's voice said. Twilight nodded, finding the name oddly appropriate for the country mare. Yep, and it's nice you know me and all, as I reckon I don't know you, but if you could be a getting, me and my kin can finish the preparations for the summer sun celebration. It's why we're here actually. Princess Celestia sent Twilight here and her assistant Spike here to take one last look at everything before she arrives, while I supervise. He smiled, ignoring Twilight's glare as Applejack nodded, accepting the stallion's answer. I getcha, so I'm guessing you want to taste what we got just to make sure it's up to the princess's standards. The country mare said as 2 of the 3 nodded their heads in approval of this course of action. Of course the lummox said yes, you offered him free food. It'd be like offering Sunset a chance to boast, she'd take the offer in a heartbeat. Twilight's eyes fell on Spike, the dragon's eyes sparkling with excitement. She hadn't seen the twinkle in his eye for a while, and despite the world being at stake, she felt it hard to crush the dragon's hope. We'll have a plate. Twilight stared on a lapse of concentration, now finding her seated at a picnic table. "Soup's on, every pony." Applejack's voice barely carried over the triangle she rang. It was only a matter of moments before a stampede of ponies came rushing towards them, trays atop each one's head. "Let me introduce you to my family. This here's Apple Fritter. Apple Cobbler. Apple Bumpkin. Red Gala. Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, Caramel Apple, Apple Strudel, Apple Tart, Baked Apples, Apple Brioche, Apple Cinnamon Crisp Big Macintosh, Apple Bloom and Granny Smith." "Up Nadam, Granny Smith, we got guests." The granny's eyes cracked open, she murmured something before going back to sleep. A little anticlimactic to Twilight's taste, but it was better than staring at Naruto gorging on the plates they'd laid down to her right. "Aren't you going to eat anything, miss?" Apple Blooms, that's what Twilight believed she was called, voice choked out as she stared at her with big doe-like eyes. It wasn't soon after the rest of the Apple family met her gaze. Twilight quickly resigned to defeat, biting into the pie that was quite delicious, but had the bitterness of being bested by a filly not even half the age of herself. Naruto chewed his sixth apple fritter, his eyes on Twilight biting into the pie, albeit remorsefully. Perhaps the filly tugging at her heartstrings and her family playing along was a bit underhanded, and despite this underhanded tactic, she loosened up a bit after a few bites. He wondered why Twilight was a last-minute addition to the task at hand, but Naruto figured that she was doing something that wasn't supposed to be doing, or Celestia honestly thought she needed to make some friends, possibly both. Whatever the reason was, Naruto was sure the princess would tell him in time. It was a system that had worked tried and true so far. So with that little notion, Naruto smiled, digging into another plate, finding the cobbler as delicious as just about anything he'd ever tasted, wishing that some pony of the Apple family was in Canterlot so he could spread the joy of their cuisine. "How was the pie?" Naruto barely got out as he chuckled at Twilight, the mare clutching at her stomach as if it was going to explode. "Too much, not another bite." Twilight mumbled to herself as Spike and Naruto gleamed at the mare's poor situation, Spike finding it hilarious and Naruto the same, albeit a little less so as Twilight started moaning the moment they got out of hearing range from the apples, which was most likely to annoy to an extent. "Oh come on, it wasn't that much." Spike here had a little over 7 apple fritters, 2 dumplings and a pie, and you don't hear him complaining. Naruto didn't bother looking at Spike, knowing if he did he'd get a decent laugh from the dragon for one reason or another. "You're one to talk, you're the reason we ate so much, you just kept talking and eating with them like it was a Saturday picnic." Twilight glared at the blonde as they continued down the path, before her hoof shot quickly to her muzzle, seconds later belching into it, a wave of relief coming over the mare. Thankful as she was for Naruto leaving, she was positive that it had more to do with getting everything done than passing up the large amount of apple-related food on the table. "We should look for Rainbow Dash next." Naruto's eyes gazed upwards, the tasks of the assigned ponies now fitting more into place. Rarity was in charge of decorations, which was something he wanted to put off for a slightly bit longer. Finding anything that was slightly related to the word decorate was much more annoying than it should be. Fluttershy was in charge of music, and while he would have chosen Octavia for that task, Naruto was sure that the mare would live up to the task. "That's a great idea if we knew what she did and how to find her." Twilight retorted as Spike glanced around Ponyville, the citizens giving them a small berth to continue through town. "Well, I happen to know that she is supposed to be cleaning the clouds for the celebration today." He eyed the clut as the mare in question, obviously not doing an ideal job at the moment. "Well, she isn't going." Incoming a cyan blur came barreling towards them, Naruto barely dodging the pony as Twilight felt the brunt of the force, her body crashing into a puddle of mud, some of it now adorning the blonde's coat and mane. "Sheesh, you'd think you'd duck when you hear someone yell incoming, talk about bad manners and lack of awareness. Am I right, little guy?" A tomboyish voice called out, her hoof outstretched toward Spike, waiting for a form of acknowledgement from the young dragon, which was slowly reciprocated. "See, even the little guy agrees, but you know what, I'm feeling really generous right now, so why don't the two you get close, and I'll clean you off." Magenta eyes slowly filled with mischief as the two got together. "Okay, now what?" Twilight closed her mouth as a downpour of rain cleaned them of mud, but left them drenched. It was official, today was the worst day in Twilight's life, of all time. "Oopsie, let me dry you two off then, give you both the rainbow dry." The Pegasus smiled as she spun around the two, the speed increasing as what seemed to be a tornado of wind blew into the two, drying them off, but ruining their coats, manes and tails in the process. "See, and now my job is bwahahaha. Oh Celestia, you should see yourselves right now." The rainbow maned Pegasus said between laughs as Twilight and Naruto looked at each other, a small smile forming on the two lips before looking back at the Pegasus. Twilight's hair now a frizzy afro of purple and the occasional pink, while Naruto's usual blonde spiky mane now pampered and treated, something that was even a rarer sight to see in Canterlot. "You're Rainbow Dash, aren't you?" Naruto stated as he shook his head, his blonde mane returning to its usual spiky and unruly state. I'm glad you noticed my awesomeness this early, so what gave it away, my sleek skills, my aerodynamic body, or was it the awe-inspiring entrance? Naruto resisted the urge to point out that all she did was crash, but that wouldn't get her to cooperate and clear the sky. It was the hair. Twilight spoke up, irritation barely restrained as she glanced at Rainbow Dash. Something wrong, Frizzy? Rainbow said as she flew higher into the air to escape the unicorn's possible wrath. You're supposed to clear the sky for today, so can you get to it? Naruto called out as Rainbow paused mid-flight. It wouldn't surprise him if she did forget, though the same could be said for him, as he forgot her and every pony else on the list at first too. Yeah, that'll be a snap. I'll do it in a jiffy. Just as soon as I'm done practicing. Rainbow's hooves waving the trio off as she lowered herself back to the ground, now knowing that the danger had passed by. Practicing for what? Spike called out, asking the question that formed on both Naruto and Twilight's mind. The Wanderbolts. They're gonna perform at the celebration tomorrow, and I'm gonna show 'em my stuff. Rainbow Dash exclaimed, her chest puffing up in pride. The very words brought a growing smile to the mare's face. The Wanderbolts. Spike voice a tad curious, wondering if it was the Wanderbolts that she was talking about. Naruto's eyes shifted between the three, thinking of what Spitfire would say or do to the poor mare if she tried to interrupt the scheduled performance. The mare was a scary sight for sure when interrupting her when on duty. The blonde knew about it firsthand. Yep. Rainbow's chest puffs up even more as her tone rises. The most talented flyers in all of Equestria? Twilight's asked in disbelief. That's them. Rainbow said with a bit of finality, conveying that she was indeed talking about those Wanderbolts. The FFT. Please. They'd never accept a Pegasus who can't even keep the sky clear for one measly day. Twilight glanced at the sky, her point proven as two more clouds drifted towards a cluster. Hey, I could clear this sky in 10 seconds flat. Naruto watched the Pegasus say with bravado. Prove it. Naruto's eyes locked with Rainbow Dash's, a grin slowly forming on his face as the words came out, begging to be proven wrong. The next 8 seconds were a total blur to Everpony and Dragon watching Rainbow Dash as a blue blur streaked back and forth across the sky, busting cloud after cloud with no pause or the slightest chance of slowing down until the task was finished. Twilight was dumbfounded by the speed of the mare as she busted the last cloud. She'd never seen anything so fast and chaotic at the same time in her life, so the gawking she did was done for good measure. Naruto was really impressed. The mare's dream of being a Wanderbolt was entirely in the realm of possibility. Now the blonde held no doubts about it that now. Spike grinned at the stunt. He'd never seen anything like it, and well, it was really impressive. The look on your faces, priceless. Now, as nice as it is to soak in the admiration from my adoring fans, I've got some practice to do now. As the words left her mouth, she took off. The only signs of where she went was the rainbow trail she left in her wake. Naruto was the first to snap out of his stupor, realizing the one thing he forgot to ask Rainbow Dash as she took off, which was where could he find Fluttershy. Because if by some coincidence Rainbow Dash knew where she was, that's where Naruto's next destination would have been. So with reluctance he looked at Spike and Twilight, leading them to the town hall. Silence, to meet the head decorator, Rarity. The town hall was silent as the three approached it, which made Naruto believe that it was finished, and after a quick peek of inside, he'd be on his way in search for Fluttershy, because he was sure he'd used all his luck up meeting Rainbow Dash on a chance encounter. Naruto slowly cracked his head in the town hall, his eyes falling on a pearl-white mare levitating various colored ribbons to columns and rafters. Her eyes falling on a peeking Naruto as her horn lit up, dragging him into the room. Well, your coat is a bit drab and the mane could use a bit of sprucing. You will do. Rarity said, glancing at Naruto, his eyes blinking on occasion, trying to comprehend what the mare just said to him. I take it you aren't alone, whom I feel I've seen or met you before. Oh, I know you were at hoity-toity soiree with the amber-coated mare Sunshine Shatter, and you must be Naruto Kamikaze. My friend's name is Sunset Shimmer, and it's actually Naruto Uzumaki. He said with a small twinge of annoyance, understanding that his name wasn't really easy to pronounce in Equestria, nor would it be in his mind, but Sunset should have been easy enough to remember. I'm deeply sorry, Naruto, it's just you two kept to yourself at that party, and while I don't mean to forget your name or hers, I just didn't imagine meeting you again considering circumstances. Might I ask, where is your special pony if it isn't a prying issue? Her tone and gaze as level as she could manage, wanting the slightest bit of Canterlit gossip to talk about during her visit to the majestic city next week to test another line of clothing out. Sunset's a Canterlit, and she's not my you-know. Rarity's eyes flickered with curiosity. Was this fine stallion on the market? Well, no Prince Blueblood, he certainly looked like a keeper, or was he and Sunset having a lover's tiff? Well, the two were extremely close from what she observed last year, maybe being around each other was overbearing. Whoa, you have to see this, Twilight, it's amazing. Rarity's eyes shifted from her guest to the next set of visitors coming though the doorway. The first a baby dragon, it was a bit cute and obviously the owner of earlier voice. The pony however caught her eye, she entered with a slow gait, her eyes taking in the tapestries and ribbons, only looking at the colorful objects with the slightest of awe. Her hair an afro frizz and bed head that irked the fashionista to no end. I now see why, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, I hope your special pony likes my decorations. Wait, what did you say? I'm sure I misheard you because I thought you said Twilight was my special pony. I did. Rarity's reply was quick, followed by laughter by Naruto and Twilight, disproving what the mare thought of the two ponies. Hahaha, oh that's a good one, me and Twilight, yeah that'll never happen. Naruto chuckled again, the sheer thought hilarious. He was 87% sure that Twilight hated him and the other 13% was her disliking him. He couldn't remember the last time she was genuinely nice to him without Celestia around. It's Twilight and I, Naruto, not me and Twilight. Twilight's eyes glaring holes into Naruto and Rarity as they shuffled under her approach. Told ya. So beautiful, Spike's voice spoke barely above a whisper. Yeah, the decorations are, aren't they? Twilight mused, oblivious to the dragon's infatuation. No, her Twilight, how are my spines, are they straight? The dragon said softly, finding the fashionista the most gorgeous thing he'd ever seen, gaining a smile from Naruto and a roll of the eyes from Twilight. I'm sure you look fine, come on let's get Naruto and drag him away before he ruins a nice decoration. Twilight said as they approached the fashionista, her violet eyes already soaking in enough of the decoration, knowing that it was in good hooves. Now darling. Whatever happened to your coiffure? Rarity had waited long enough as Twilight and her came face to face. Despite Naruto's insistence on not wanting anything to do with the mare, she believed the two could form a relationship of sorts, it just needed a little zest and push in the right direction. Oh, you mean my mane? Well, it's a long story. We are just here to check on the decorations and then we'll be out of your hair. Twilight said, trying to dissuade the conversation as Naruto inched away from the mares. Out of my hair? What about your hair? Rarity said in protest, a little more than she originally intended, but this was for love and gossip. Wait. Where are we going? Help. Twilight screamed as the fashionista dragged her away, kicking and screaming as she tried to escape the magical aura around her. You think we should follow them, Spike? He looked away knowing the answer as Spike hopped on his back, ushering him to look for Twilight. Naruto drew upon his magic as his horn began to glow with a blue hue, it crackled for the briefest of seconds as his head jerked to the right as his body followed. Naruto, can I ask you something about Twilight? Spike looked down as the blonde shifted slightly, his speed reducing greatly as Naruto continued on. Go ahead, I'm still trying to find her. Why don't you like her? I mean you don't hate her, but you don't really like her either. Spike noticed the pause in Naruto's step before continuing down the street, his eyes now directed towards the dirt road. The reason I don't like Twilight is because she reminds me of my village before I came here. How's that? I wasn't well liked or even acknowledged in my village, they stared at me and looked my way, but it was always past me like I wasn't there worth my time. I did a lot of things to get their respect, my clone trick was the first acknowledgement that I was worth something, and then I accomplished some more things that'd make you look at me like I was crazy, but I did it for the acknowledgement of my village. So when Twilight did the same after I came to Canterlot, well things changed for me, and I'm not going to accept that anymore, I'm not going to be the stallion that ponies will walk all over. He said it with a wistful sigh as he stopped at a home, it looked like a big top tent, but he was sure there was more to it than that. Do you think you two would be friends if she did accept you? Spike asked the easiest question that came to mind first, he had others, countless others, but they could wait for now, Naruto wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, and he'd always have an answer for him, it was one of the reasons he liked him, even if it made him look like an idiot or you didn't agree with it. Naruto was truthful to an almost unreal extent. Probably not right away, but it would be a step in the right direction, though I don't see it happening anytime soon. Also we're here, Spike. Naruto smiled as a panting Twilight burst through the door, closing it abruptly behind her. That bad? He said with mirth, gaining a glare from the lavender unicorn. Let's just go, I don't want to be here when she finds out I left. The sun slowly dipped closer and closer to the ground, the search for the Fluttershy was hopefully going to be completed before the day's end. So how do we find Fluttershy, any of you got an idea where to find our musician? He craned his head upwards to get a look at Spike, wondering if the little guy had an idea. What about asking Rarity where we can find Fluttershy? Spike said with a wistful smile, hoping to see the beauty once again. As Naruto huffed out, not wanting to head back and ask a fashionista for advice, partly in fear if being dragged into finishing whatever Twilight was originally doing in the first place. Twilight, any ideas? His head shifting back to its original position as Twilight kept in front of them. How about the library? She didn't even need to look back to see their disapproving stares, obviously thinking she had other intentions. Well, she did, the library was also a practical choice too. That's almost as bad as Spike's idea. Naruto said with a huff. He hadn't told the mare that the library was the place they'd be staying for the night. Except we can look up Fluttershy's address in the library and finish our task. Twilight said with a smug tone as the two males stared at each other before accepting Twilight's idea. The mare paused as whistling sounded ahead of the group, a look of disbelief forming as they headed towards the sound. The buttercream-colored Pegasus smiled as she directed a collection of birds. Her pink mane curled around her neck delicately as she moved her head rhythmically. Cyan eyes darting towards one bird in particular. Oh my. Stop please, everyone, excuse me sir. I mean, no offense, but your rhythm is just a teeny tiny bit off. Now, follow me, please. A1, A2, A1 2 3. Hello. Naruto said with an enthusiastic grin as the Pegasus yelped in fright, causing the birds to leave them in a panic, with a few droppings landing on the blonde's horn. I just got a shower too. We are so sorry, he didn't mean to frighten your birds. We're just here to check up on the music and it's sounding beautiful. I'm Twilight Sparkle, what's your name? Twilight's tone kept calm as she looked at Naruto grumbling about the bird droppings dripping off his horn, which served him for leaving her to deal with that fashionista. I'm Fluttershy. The meek mare spoke in a hushed tone. I'm sorry, what was that? Twilight looked toward Spike hoping he heard as his ride was a bit preoccupied at the moment. My name is Fluttershy. She said in a quieter tone as Twilight leaned in closer hoping that she could make out some words she said. Nice to meet you Fluttershy, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, I just wish your pets didn't well you know. An irritated sigh escaped Naruto's mouth as brushed the bird crap off his horn. I'm sorry, I'm sure that they didn't mean to and they aren't my birds, they are wild. Fluttershy said as her head dipped to the ground, hoping that the unicorn wasn't too mad at the birds. It's fine, though can you speak up, they can't hear you as well as I can. His ears glowing with magic as Fluttershy nodded, gaining a small amount of confidence from the blonde unicorn. And it looks your bird's back, so that's good. Fluttershy nodded, her eyes slowly moving from Naruto's to Spike. Baby dragon. Spike stood no chance at the charging Pegasus as she plucked him from Naruto's back. Oh, I've never seen a baby dragon before. He's so cute. Well, Spike said in a superior tone, earning an eye roll from Naruto and Twilight. Oh my, he talks. I didn't know dragons could talk. That's just so incredibly wonderful. I just don't even know what to say. The Pegasus said in surprise, missing the deepening looks of annoyance from his two companions. Well, in that case we'd better be going. Naruto nodding in agreement as the two slowly turned to avoid the subject. Wait, what's his name? She let out a sudden shriek trying to prolong the talk with the trio. I'm Spike. Hi Spike, I'm Fluttershy. Wow, a talking dragon. And what do dragons talk about? Well, what do you want to know? Naruto was beginning to dread this, he liked the mare's enthusiasm, but giving Spike a reason to talk about himself wasn't exactly high up on the list of things he wanted to do. Absolutely everything. The very forward response caused a groan of irritation from the duo. Well, I started out as a cute little purple and green egg. 2 hours had passed as the story finally came to an end, thankfully only telling of the more interesting things that Spike could remember in his life, and not the boring parts like what he ate or where he used the restroom at. And that's the story of my whole entire life. Well, up until today. Do you want to hear about today? Oh, yes, please. Fluttershy said with enthusiastic squeal. I'm sure Spike would love to, but as you can see, we are needed in the library for library things, isn't that right Naruto? Naruto responded with an enthusiastic nod as he looked away from Fluttershy, not wanting to see the heartbroken mare. Aye Fluttershy, after we're done I'm sure Spike would want to talk with you more. Naruto's eyes fell on the door as he slowly opened it, hoping for some sort of relaxation before talking with Celestia. Surprise. Apparently not, as he looked at the denizens of Ponyville crammed into the library tree all surrounding the mysterious pink mare he met entering the town. Cyan eyes rolled as the Friendship Express, which was horribly named in the mare's honest opinion, but she wasn't here to complain about the train's name, no, she was here to escape the summer sun celebration in Canterlot. This year's planner was Prince Blueblood, and while it is an ideal party for Canterlot any other time of the year, there was no actually festivities which made the upcoming celebration nothing more than a fancy dinner party that only those of the posh lifestyle would be aware of. So with that knowledge in mind Sunset slipped out after attending Mundancer's party. The poor mare was crushed when she found out that her object of affection didn't attend her party, but still kept his promise of getting some of the younger and less experienced guards to attend the party. She got a rather polite explanation, and while she was crushed she took it surprisingly well before continuing the party. Her eyes traipsed over the ponies talking amongst each other, Octavia's mulberry eyes locked with hers, she gave a small smile to the musical mare, which was returned with a curt nod. Sunset respected the quiet mare, she did little to irritate her, and she always held a pleasant conversation regardless of the subject. Her musical talents were superb, a master of the cello, and she believed the talent crossed over to other various instruments as well, even if the Earth Pony wouldn't care to admit it. The only fault Sunset could find in the silent and observant mare besides her choice of a best friend was that she was too observant, commenting on things that most ponies would overlook, and it was a tad infuriating. The small thing though was overlooked for all the things she did for ponies, including herself, as she contributed bits and time to help make the musical arts known throughout the world. I'm surprised, honestly. I would expect you to have a more joyful look on your face, Sunset, not something of concern. Okay, it was a little infuriating to see her point out these things with a flat tone. Yeah, aren't you supposed to be excited? I mean, the Naruto probably has something that nobody has ever seen before planned for the party. Sunset nodded in small agreement with the light gold Pegasus smiling in front of her. Naruto, as Spitfire referred to, always had a sense of keen sense, doing something to surprise ponies when the sun celebration came around. The aviators clung to her forehead, keeping strands of light orange and amber locks of hair from her mane from blocking her view of the rest of the companions. Her flight goggles wrapped around her neck securely as she looked at the rest of them. Spitfire was a commodity, the word of the Wanderbolts, as strict as can be when she was needed for something Wanderbolt or Equestria related, but that layer of toughness slowly melted away as soon as she was given free time, idly living and goofing off that nobody, not even Celestia herself, would suspect of the Pegasus. It was her skills as a flyer that drew Naruto's interest and her personality out of the spotlight that made her his friend. Sunset knew of Spitfire's few faults, but those were few and far between for her to not like the mare in question. It will be surprising, but it's not the question on my mind, Spitfire. Why are you here with us when you should be with your associates preparing for the Wanderbolt's performance in Ponyville? Octavia's voice rang out as she smiled slightly, the question now hanging heavily in the air as all eyes focused on the flyer. I'm not performing it this year. Fleetfoot stepped up and took charge of the situation, promptly getting Misty Fly and Silver Lining to volunteer as well. I'd admit I'm a little nervous that 3 of our less experienced members are performing, but I have faith in them, and if anything does go wrong, I'll be in the right neighborhood to help out. Her aviators slowly dropped, covering her bright orange eyes. But I'm surprised that you're here actually. I would imagine Prince Blueblood would insist that you play for him considering everything we've seen. Spitfire's tone held a little mirth as the attention shifted from her to Octavia, the Earth Pony's stoic look hardening under the gazes of the train goers. Mulberry eyes stared into the reflective aviators before letting out an exhale. I'd wish not to say anything, but since the matter has been brought up, yes, I was offered a chance to perform for the celebration, but I politely declined Prince Blueblood's offer. Octavia let out a small smile as the ponies nodded in agreement at the mare's choice, knowing personally of the stallion's prickly and grating personality. Can we please change the subject? That bloward has been a thorn in my flank for a while, and I got on this train to escape him, not hear more of an idiot that's only sense of entitlement comes from the royal blood coursing through his veins. Celestia help us all if he does get the throne. I don't think Equestria would last a year under his narcissistic rule. Sunset let out a sigh as the two nodded in agreement at the mare's statement. The train's slowing down. Octavia's voice called out as Sunset glanced out the window. True to Octavia's words rang true as the train cart slowly came to a crawl, the Friendship Express leaving the cart behind, continuing on to its destination Ponyville. It didn't slow down, some pony or thing detached us. Sunset's tone let out a growl as the train became less visible with each second that passed. So what do you think did it? The cellist spoke up as she glanced around, hoping that some pony would speak up, not entirely liking what she'd just been told. She tried to avoid the more dangerous life her companions seemed to be involved with. It doesn't matter, we should just head to Ponyville on hoof. Spitfire's voice called, a small frown forming on her face as the rest of them agreed, Octavia a little more hesitantly than the others. The Pegasus felt sorry for the Earth Pony. She wasn't as adjusted to danger as the Sunset and herself, instead traveling through the city to perform place after place. Traveling in relative safety when she left the city to perform. What about what's out there on the plains and beyond? Octavia said with a twinge of concern as she concentrated on her hearing, only for her nerves to be calmed slightly by the clacking of hooves and a wing flap or two from her companions. We'll be fine, Octavia, that whole train cart thing was probably a weird accident. If there is anything out there, it won't try to attack us during the day without provocation, and as provoking as Sunset's face is, I'm positive we're safe. Spitfire said with a small chuckle as Sunset turned away, her horn glowing with a turquoise aura that felt as though it didn't appreciate the small joke at her expense, the fact even more confirmed as the door slammed open. And during the night? Octavia asked as her tone became lighter, the fear slowly ebbing away as the unicorn hopped out of the train cart. I'll burn them to a crisp. Sunset's voice called out as Spitfire left the cart, taking to the sky. It looks far, we might reach Ponyville before the summer sun celebration starts. Her aviators dropped over her eyes as her wings locked in place, letting her gently glide down to the top of the cart. And you fly us there? I might, but if I was attacked in the sky I'd be next to useless, and I'd rather us make it there alive than the one that I didn't take find us harmed or worse. Her tone was a bit too chipper as Octavia hopped out of the cart. Come on, we're wasting time, and if I'd rather not use my magic unless it was absolutely necessary. Sunset spoke as they started their journey to Ponyville, one a little cautious, one carefree and the last determined, unaware of the magenta eyes watching them from under the train cart. Despite the fact he was hoping for a little rest before looking around the city and leaving Twilight to whatever she wanted to do, this party was amazing. The festive air this party held trumped anything extravagant Canterlot held, formality thrown out the window as ponies genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Pinkie Pie, the aptly named Pink Pony, had set everything up, even knowing where they were going to stay the night, which was probably something he should look into later. It wasn't too long before Twilight hid herself in the back room after accidentally drinking half a bottle of hot sauce instead of the fruit punch. Being that Twilight was gone, Pinkie brought it upon herself to introduce him to every pony in the library, many of which he could barely remember their faces and names. Rose, Luck, Daisy and Lily was a trio that gossiped with each other as Pinkie introduced them to him. Rose Luck's eyes stayed on him for far too long as he was concerned, but they slowly drifted back towards the group, talking in hushed tones with each other. Time Turner or Dr. Wooves, he wasn't entirely sure which was his real name, was another interesting pony as he fiddled with his hooves, staring at others with an unusual joy before taking off to another pony, Minuet if he recalled. Cloudchaser and Flitter were cool, a little flirty, but it wasn't something the blonde wasn't accustomed to, though he was thankful that Pinkie Pie pushed him away to meet the other guests. The last pony he remembered meeting was a bubbly Pegasus with a filly unicorn on her back. The sight was rather adorable as she fumbled around trying to find the right words as the filly corrected the Pegasus's sentences without a second thought. Dinky and Ditsy Doo was their names if he recalled correctly. The others seemingly blended in as a few fillies passed under hoof talking and playing amongst each other. This was things he missed, having fun without nary a care in the world. I need to come back here. He said it to himself mentally, finding that the only times Naruto could only truly unwind was when he was away from Canterlot, letting his action do the talking as he beat foes either to help Equestria or out of his personal gain. Which was another thing he needed to address sooner or later, which was Naruto was content here in Equestria, even going far as to call it home. That wasn't the problem, though he'd yet to reveal that one fact to Celestia, instead taking on mission after mission, destroying his chances purposefully so he'd stay. The thought slowly inched his way in his mind. He'd tell her after the celebration that he was done searching for a way home, until then he had a party to enjoy. Naruto toned out the mayor's long-winded speech as he looked over the crowd. Every pony he'd met so far, Rainbow Dash hovering over half of the standing crowd looking at some ponies and dive-bombing at a random pony for fun. Applejack was conversing with her brethren, Pinkie Pie zipped back and forth, Fluttershy was hiding in a corner, nervously avoiding every pony that came near her. Twilight had a nervous look about her, gazing at Rarity up on the balcony, preparing herself to pull the curtain. The horns played announcing the princess's arrival, and a hush fell over the crowd. Every pony waited with held breath as the curtains pulled back to reveal the majestic Princess Celestia. Naruto would greet the welcome sight with a warm smile as she begun her speech, and then he'd sneak off and get some well-deserved rest, letting every pony else meet the regal princess. So when he saw Nopony standing behind the curtain as it was pulled, the sight sent a pit of unease in his stomach. Remain calm, every pony, there must be a reasonable explanation. There wasn't a reasonable explanation no matter how hard Mare tried to rationalize everything. Ooh, I love guessing games. Is she hiding? Pinkie Pie said in a playful tone, oblivious to how dear Celestia took event like this to heart. She's gone. Rarity said as the ponies gasped and murmured with each other, attention filling the air. Ooh, she's good. Pinkie Pie still thinking this was a game, and that unease was starting to shift into an uncomfortable knowing that something had happened to his beloved mentor. The crowd murmured to each other as seconds passed, and Celestia had still yet to arrive. He snuck a quick glance at Twilight. The mare looked nervous as could be. The mouths of ponies went agape as he took another glance at the balcony, a swirling mist forming into an alicorn he'd never seen before. Immediately he knew for some reason that this pony was the reason that Celestia hadn't appeared. How long has it been since I've seen ponies? It would be a refreshing sight if it wasn't that you all reminded of those sun-loving idiots 1,000 years ago. The alicorn's voice called out as she let out a laugh, every pony feeling a wave of despair as her cat-like eyes crinkled in delight. Who are you? Naruto shouted as the rest of the crowd turned to look at him, the carefree and playful nature gone, replaced with an angry version of the blonde the ponies couldn't believe they were seeing. What, am I not royal enough for you? Nightmare Moon slowly said as she transformed into mist, swerving between the crowd, appearing in front of Naruto, her stature towering over Naruto, and a cruel grin forming on her face. I don't care what you are, who are you and where is Princess Celestia? Naruto said as glared upwards at the alicorn unintimidated by the threat standing before him. "Oh, this is rich, some knave thinks he can make demands of me." Aha! Nightmare Moon swiftly ended as Naruto slammed his hoof into her chin in a vicious uppercut, sending the alicorn to the ground and a small sense of satisfaction over Naruto as he landed on the ground. That takes care of one problem now to find the princes. The words caught in his throat as he felt two hooves slammed into his gut, the taste of copper filling his mouth as was sent flying backwards, crashing through the town hall's wall and sprawled out in the street. His horn acting on instinct as he casted one last spell before consciousness left him nearly alone in the streets. "Does any other barbarian wish to try to overthrow me? I'm sure that your head will find a lovely home on a pike." A hushed silence fell over the crowd as they looked at her and shook their head in unison, nobody wanting to dare defy the alicorn now. "So does my crown no longer count now that I have been imprisoned for 1,000 years? Did you not recall the legend? Did you not see the signs?" She eyed the crowd as they all glanced at each other, trying to muster an answer to appease the angry god. "I did. And I know who you are. You're the mare in the moon, Nightmare Moon." Twilight's voice remained calm as the words passed her lips, ponies froze in terror, some murmured begging for this to be a horrid nightmare, and others just fainted at the sight as a sinister smile fell on Nightmare Moon's face. "Then you all should know why I'm here then. Remember this day, little ponies, for it was your last. From this moment forth, the night will last forever." Her words echoed with thunder as she disappeared, leaving all but one pony stunned as she dashed into the street. Her lone thoughts interrupted as Naruto flanked her. "I thought you were dead or at least knocked unconscious." Twilight asked, a little concern evident in her voice. While she didn't like particularly being around the stallion at any time, that didn't mean she wished death on the poor guy. "Really, that please shining armor hit me harder than that, and he's on our side," Naruto said as they continued on to the library, a small look of surprise finding itself on the blonde. "So what's the plan? What happened to smashing her face in?" "That plan went out the window when I put everything into that first hit, magic and all to knock her ass out, so that mean plan B, which is something I'm sure you already thought of." His tone a little higher as they entered the library, dead set on fixing the crisis they found themselves plunged into, even if it had to mean dealing with each other to solve it. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.